There's a lot of different software tools you can use to help create a work breakdown structure, and the most common one is Microsoft Project. I've got a screenshot here. This is actually from the textbook on page 216, and you can see that on the left-hand side we've got work items and then work packages, which are the smallest level that you break your work breakdown structure into. When you enter your time estimates on the work packages, the software automatically tallies that up, and then you can use this to create a Gantt chart to help with scheduling. Just know that software is available to you, and we're not going to use Project in this class, but it's one of the most common software tools that a lot of project managers use. The big point here is that you can make a work breakdown structure, or you should make a work breakdown structure, and software can help you do that. As you're making a work breakdown structure, don't confuse tasks with specifications. Tasks are things that you need to do, work items that you need to do to complete the work of the project. Specifications are almost like bulleted points, features, requirements that the project needs to have when it's done. So example would be a task is remove old flooring if you're going with the construction example from earlier, and a specification would be new flooring must be made of laminate. Well, this isn't work to be done. This is just a specification, a bullet point about the end result of the project. You can create a work breakdown structure by starting with deliverables and going from there, or you don't have to. It's just another method of creating a work breakdown structure. However you make your work breakdown structure, it is a good idea to involve the project team and customers. And there's a couple ways that you can do that. We're going to start by looking at Chapter 3 and then explore 5 separate ways to create a work breakdown structure. So if we go back to Chapter 3, in the Job Well Done consulting case, they built their work breakdown structure around deliverables. And the first thing they did was decide, what do we need to produce? And then what work do we need to do to make that happen? They involved the project team in creating and reviewing the work breakdown structure, which is important because those who plan the work should do the work, or rather those who do the work should help plan the work. It's a symbiotic process. You don't want the people who are planning isolated from the people who are doing. They should all work together. In Chapter 3, Erica and Joe involved the project team when they created their work breakdown structure. You're just going to get better estimates that way because the people who are doing the work have a better sense of what's all required and the time and resources required to do it. So as I mentioned, there's 5 main approaches to creating work breakdown structure. Let's look at each one. The first approach involves using guidelines, and this is when you create your work breakdown structure according to existing rules in terms of what is commonly done in that particular organization or profession. This happens a lot on government projects. So if you want to bid on a government project, especially if it's a DoD project, they have specific guidelines that they require for your work breakdown structure. And there's an example on page 219 where the Air Force was soliciting bids, and existing work breakdown structures helped contractors prepare their estimates for bid so that everyone was kind of on the same page. Another thing you can do is use the PMI Practice Standard, which is a guide that has been developed by the Project Management Institute to help people know what generally should be done on a work breakdown structure. These guidelines aren't set in stone. They're going to be adapted to fit given circumstances and different industries, and your organization is going to do this a little differently. But if there's existing rules in place about how your company, your industry creates a work breakdown structure or different items that they use in a work breakdown structure, start from there, and then you can tailor as you need to given your unique project. Another approach is the analogy approach. That's where you just use a similar work breakdown structure, not guidelines, but literally a breakdown structure, a work breakdown structure that has been used, and then kind of adapt that and use that as a starting point. This is useful in a lot of IT projects. There's a lot of uncertainty in IT projects. So if there's a work breakdown structure for a project that is similar to one you've already, or that's similar to one that you will be working on, then you can start with that and adapt it to fit your needs. New projects often have similar elements to older projects. And one example of this that's again from the book is McDonnell Douglas. When they created a work breakdown structure for a new aircraft, they used existing work breakdown structures as a starting point, and that just helped streamline their operation, help things move quicker and more efficiently. Another one is the top-down or bottom-up approach. It's similar in terms of how you craft it. It just depends on where you start. A top-down approach involves starting with the largest items of a project and breaking them into smaller items. And we've seen that already in several of the examples where we start at the big picture level and then we break down into smaller groups. This is conventional, it's easy to use, and everyone can understand this type of approach. The bottom-up approach is where you identify specific work that needs to be done and then kind of build from the ground up. And you take the work items and put those together into an overall structure. This is good when there's entirely new systems. You're not quite sure what the end result's going to look like, but you know that it's going to involve this and this and this. And you can then take that and transform it into an entire work breakdown structure. This helps increase buy-in from a project team because the team doesn't always know what's going to be involved. And if you can come to the team and say, well, we know that all of these individual work items are going to be involved and here's how they all fit together, then the team is more likely to buy in. The last thing we're going to look at is mind mapping. This is similar to top-down, but it's just more freeform. It's really just visual in nature. And all it does, it involves you taking a more visual, not creative approach, but rather than doing an outline approach, you just map it out visually so you can have a better sense of how it all fits together. You start in the center and work your way out. So here we've got a mind map where we had IT upgrade in the middle, and then we worked out from there. And it's the same idea as making it from a top down, where we had those examples earlier where there's literally a item at the top that's been broken down and then broken down. It's taking that same thing, only starting in the center and working your way out. I mentioned a while ago, don't overthink this. Mind mapping is an example of that. Don't look at a mind map and think, I don't understand any of this. Really, it's just taking the work that needs to be done and mapping it out and breaking it down. And this happens to be another way of doing it visually. Some people prefer a more visual approach. Some people don't. You can also use this for a bottom-up approach too. There's lots of ways to do this. And there's lots of ways to create a work breakdown structure in general. The big point of all of this is that you need to create a work breakdown structure. Whether you use one of these techniques or adapt it to fit your own, as long as you have a way of breaking down all the work and knowing what's involved to do the work of the project, it's going to help you manage the project as a whole.